This is a brief tutorial of the game Ancient Knowledge as played on Board Game Arena. Ancient Knowledge is a tableau builder, engine building game where you are creating monuments, artifacts, and technologies, some of which fade over time, but all in an effort to gain the most points at the end of the game. There are 3 different types of cards that are important to understand. So these are the cards in your hand. You start out with 6 cards. In a beginner game, you just get 6 basic cards. After that, you have 10 cards and you keep 6. And as you can see here, I have a few of the monument cards. These here, they come in 3 different flavors: the blue, the green, and there's also the city. So city, megalith, pyramid, but red, blue, and green basically. There are the monument cards here, which are the purple ones. Oh, sorry, the artifact cards. The monument cards are the blue, green, and red, orange-ish. The artifact cards are the purple. And then these are the technology cards. These are in a pool in the public, so any player can pull from these. There's level 1 cards that give you immediate effects, and level 2 cards that give you end of game points. Those stars always mean points. Alright, so let's start with the artifact cards. This is your main board. Everybody has their own board, and one of the things that you have on your board are 5 spots that you can place artifact cards. And so as one of your actions, you can take the artifact card and place it in one of these open spots. If you have all 5 spots filled, you cannot play an artifact card, but there are some cards that let you destroy artifacts for bonuses or just to make more room. The artifacts typically will give you what's called a timeline benefit. So basically at the end of your turn consists of an action phase, a timeline phase, and a decline phase. And you can see in this timeline phase is when any of the timeline actions would trigger. So whenever you see that hammer, an arm or rock or something, and those artifacts that have that and any visible monument cards that have that symbol will trigger at that point. That's after your 2 actions, any 2 actions there. So the artifacts will go here, and they will give you some sort of either ongoing benefit or a benefit that triggers at the timeline phase, or maybe it's just a really good instant benefit. The monument cards, those you can play as well, but those have a few different things with them. So first of all, each of them has a number in the top right. So this one is a 2, 6, 2. It's going to be a number from 1 to 6. And that number is where you place that monument card. It's important where you place the monument card because those monument cards decay over time. And decaying does some good things and some bad things. First of all, the only way to get the points on those cards, that 1 point here and that 1 point there, some of them have a lot of points, is if they go all the way to decay, and they decay all the way off of the board here, past 1 into this phase here, to this section there. But any ongoing effects, like this one here, this is ongoing effect here, where if I create an artifact, I can do some things. That only exists while this is visible. So it puts it on 6, which is nice. So I can go 6, and I have 6 turns where I can use this power. But as soon as it decays off of the board, I no longer have access to that power. The other thing, though, that you need to notice is this little symbol right here and a number next to it. So this is a 3, and this one is a 0. But the knowledge is what this number is. And so when this is placed, so if I put that on the 2, I will place 3 knowledge tokens on top of it. And there are ways to get rid of knowledge, because you want to get rid of knowledge before it decays, because any knowledge that you don't get rid of goes into here and becomes lost knowledge, which is negative points. You don't gain points for getting the knowledge, but you lose points if you don't get the knowledge before it fully decays. There are ways to remove knowledge after it's been lost. For instance, some of the technologies up here let you do that, but typically you're trying to get rid of that knowledge while it's on this timeline before it decays. Note that the number here, there are spots. You can see the outlines here. You can have multiple monuments in a single number. So if I had that 2, I could put this 2 here and it would be on top of it. But you couldn't have more than 2 in a single slot. However, you can also pay cards to move that monument to a different spot. So if it's supposed to go on 2, but you wanted to put it on 3, or there wasn't room on 2 and you wanted to put it on 3, or maybe you wanted to put it on 1 so it decays faster, then you can pay a card for every spot that you move it. There are a few other pieces that these monument cards have that these starting ones don't have, but that you can see them in your icons here. So if you ever see this on one of your cards, that means in order to play it, you have to discard that many cards just to play it in the first place. And then if you want to play it in a different spot, that's more cards you have to play. And then this lock symbol, if you see that, that means you have to put it in that spot. You're not allowed to pay cards to move it to a different spot. So those monuments go in these various spots, and then after every turn during the decline phase, all of those monuments slide to the left, and any that are in the one spot will slide off into the decayed monuments. Note, you cannot pay cards to put things below 1. You can only pay them to put them in a different spot that has an empty spot, 1 to 6. That's what this means here. You can pay cards to move your monuments around. Finally, there are technologies here. There are 3 different types of technologies: the secret, ancient, and writing. The level 1 technologies, they all have this effect that's an immediate effect. And then the level 2 technologies all have an end of game scoring where you get scoring. But they also all have some sort of requirement before you can take that technology. So for instance, this one says in order to take this technology and get 4 points, you have to have 5 of this monument type in your past, which is over here. So until you do that, you cannot take this technology. And this one requires 3 of each type in your past. This one requires 7 of the same type in your past. So these are more end of game ways to score. These ones are more immediate effects that you can get, but some of them do have requirements to draw the level 1s as well. For instance, this says you need to have 5 lost knowledge on your board, and if you do, you can get rid of 3 of it. Remember, lost knowledge is knowledge that hasn't been taken off the cards before they decay, and so it goes into here. And they are negative points, but there, like I mentioned before, there are ways, like all 3 of these, let you discard some of that lost knowledge if you have it. These other ones just let you get rid of the knowledge that exists on your timeline, and this one lets you move a monument. So they do different things, and as they are chosen, so the first time someone chooses from one of these lines, it does not refill, but the second time one of these lines is chosen, then the last one is cleared out and then filled with 3 again. And then at the halfway point through the game, when somebody has gotten 7 monuments all decayed all the way to their past, one of these will turn in, they'll choose one of them and it'll turn into a level 2 technology source rather than level 1. And so towards the end of the game, more of the level 2 ones will be available. All right, now we understand what artifacts, monuments, and technologies. The technologies go over here, by the way. Just kind of stack to the side. Now that we understand what those are, let's talk about what happens during a turn. So during a turn, we mentioned a little bit already, but you have 3 phases. First, your action phase, where you can do 2 things. Then your timeline phase, where any cards that have this symbol, whether artifacts or monuments that have this symbol, can be activated in any order that you like. And then a decline phase, where everything shifts to the right, and anything that's here shifts down into your past. Any knowledge that was on that card is put into lost knowledge, and any of those monuments that have this symbol on them, when they decline, that effect is triggered. So what can you do on your turn? There are 5 different actions that you can take, and you can take any 2 of those actions, or you can take the same action twice, and you can do them in any order that you like. First is the create card. That is how you place artifacts or monuments on your board. You can choose one of your cards and you place it as we talked about before, either the monuments on your timeline or the artifacts in your board. If there are any requirements, such as card requirements or placement requirements, you have to follow those as well. That is the create action. The learn action is how you get a technology card. You simply choose one as long as you have the requirements, or if there are no requirements. And then for these, you do the immediate effect, and for others, you get points at the end of the game. The archive is a way to get rid of knowledge without using other cards. So often you'll be able to get rid of knowledge through special powers. So for instance, this artifact lets you at the end of your turn, at the building or at the timeline phase, lets you discard 2 cards and get rid of 3 knowledge on any card. So that's a way to do it. This one, there's certain requirements that let you, if you keep those requirements and don't get too much lost knowledge, then you get to remove a knowledge as well. So there are a lot of different ways to remove knowledge. Here's another one that lets you remove knowledge whenever you create a new artifact. But if you can't do it that way and you still need to get rid of that knowledge, you can always do the archive action. And so what that does is, for any card that you discard, for every card that you discard, you can get rid of 1 knowledge from any card on your timeline. And so you can split that. It doesn't have to be the same. You can pick and choose which ones you have. That's the archive action. The excavate action is a way to get new cards, but it requires to have monuments in your past. So as they decay and go into your past, you can use them to draw cards. And the way that you do that is you choose however many you want, and you tap them. They rotate, and you get 2 cards per card that you rotate. Note that your hand can never be more than 10. It's not a discard down to 10 at the end of your turn. It can never go beyond 10. So you can't excavate 5 cards at once if you have cards in your hand. But if you had 2 or 3, you could do that and get 4 or 6 cards and draw those into your hand immediately. That's a one-time use for the cards, the monuments that decay, though there are some artifacts and other cards that let you unrotate them and restore them back. I think they say awaken those past monuments so that you can use them again to excavate. Remember, they don't give you any powers when they're over here, but you can use them to draw cards using the excavate action. And then finally, you could just do a search action, which just lets you draw a card from the deck. Again, that's not the most efficient way to draw cards. You're going to want to either use the excavate or some combination of cards or artifacts to do that, or even technologies to draw cards. It's going to be a much more efficient way to draw it, but if that's the only thing you can do and you just need more cards, because oftentimes cards are a resource to spend for archiving, for moving cards around, so on and so forth, then search is a way to do that. So on your turn, take 2 actions, or 1 action twice, then go to the timeline phase where you activate any of these symbols on your board, then the decline phase where everything shifts over and some technologies fall off and their any powers that have that decline symbol on them will trigger, and then it moves on to the next player. the next player. The game ends when someone has 14 cards in their past, 14 monuments, and then the round ends. So whoever the last player will finish out their turn. So there's an equal number of turns, and then scores are totaled. And any cards that have a little star at that on that symbol will be totaled. Any of these cards that have points in the stars that have been decayed all the way over here, those will count. You'll get 1 point for every card that you still have in your timeline. Not, if this were 3 points here, you would only get 1 point if it were in your timeline, not the full points, but it is something. And you lose a point for every lost knowledge that you may have. That's basically how this game works. Let's go through a few turns to see it in action. Okay, this is not quite midway through the game, but each of us have a few monuments that have decayed and various artifacts and cards. So here's my board right now. You can see I have 2 monuments on the timeline. This one, I've already gotten rid of all the knowledge from it, so it has 0, but this one still has 3 knowledge on it. I've got 3 artifacts here. I've got a technology that I used in order to get rid of some knowledge. And I have 2 past cards that I've used in the excavate action to draw more cards. So those both have been rotated so I could draw cards with them. You can also see the other players' timelines. You can see here this player was able to stack these 2, but these again will all shift over. They have some that haven't been used yet and various things like that. So, and here is my hand of cards currently. You can also see the state of everyone's game based on where they are right now. So here are the different monuments and number of monuments that have been in the past, that have been put to the past, the number of artifacts each person has, the number of lost knowledge. So you can see here this player has 1 lost knowledge. There are gold knowledges that will show up. Those are worth 5 each, so you may see those in people's lost knowledge as well. And it is my turn, so I have 2 actions, and here are the 5 options that I choose. And so I believe the first thing that I'm doing is doing a create action. So I choose an artifact to create, or a monument. In this case, I choose an artifact. Notice this artifact lets me straighten 4 monuments that have been used already. So at some point at the timeline action, I can discard this and straighten monuments so that I can reuse them in the excavate action to get more cards. Then my second action, I choose this this technology here, not necessarily for its ability, although it could be useful in certain cases. I'm really looking for the symbol because I have this card here, and if by the end of the game I get 3 or 4 of those symbols, I get 4 points, and if I get 5, I get 7 points. And so I'm just trying to collect those for the end of game scoring. But I end up putting that here, and so now I have 2 of them. And I end up swapping these 2. Again, it didn't really matter. But then my actions are done, and now this is part of my timeline phase. These are all of the effects that I get for my timelines, mostly with the artifacts here. So I get, in this case, I can draw a card. I can discard 2 cards to remove 3 knowledge from cards. I can use that card to straighten up 4 cards, and this one just lets me remove a knowledge. And I can pick which ones of these I want to use, and then eventually pass. So I draw a card, I get rid of a knowledge, and then I believe I end without doing those 2 things because I've already gotten rid of almost all the knowledge I need to. Go on to the next turn, and then cards slide to the left. This one's about to decay, but I'm going to be able to get rid of that knowledge before it decays and gives me that lost knowledge. That's a typical turn. Again, When somebody has 7 of these, that's when the technologies change, and one of these, they choose which one, turns into a 2, and all of those are discarded, and more level 2 cards are brought out. And then when someone has 14 monuments in the past, then the game ends after that round. Towards the end, when I had a pretty good engine going where I could draw a lot of cards and get rid of most of my knowledge pretty easily through some of these artifacts. I was front loading and paying cards to move things towards the front here so that I could decline them more quickly and get to that 14 and get the points from them more quickly. So there's some strategies in where you place things. There is some cards that talk about adjacency, and so a card is adjacent if it's next to or above another card, not diagonal. So you can be adjacent up to 3 cards if you have one above and one to each side. So that's another reason to pay for cards to be in different columns, so you can get those adjacency bonuses. Like these ones here, you can basically attach to a blue card, and as it goes down the timeline, it just starts removing the knowledge from it each step of the way. That's a good way to get rid of knowledge from one of these cards without having to do the archive action or some other effect. Well, that is Ancient Knowledge on Board Game Arena. I hope this was helpful.